You tell yourself you're just tired of people, that you prefer being alone, that it's easier not to expect much. But every time someone gets close, you slowly pull away. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough to stay safe. And if you're honest, it's not hatred. It's something quieter, something that feels a lot like waiting for the letdown.
You meet someone new. At first, you're open, curious. There's that subtle warmth, the possibility of being understood. But then your mind starts scanning. What if they change? What if they lose interest? What if they disappoint you like the others? So you start adjusting. You respond slower. You share less. You prepare yourself emotionally for distance before it even happens. And when things fade, you say, "See, I know it." But what you rarely notice is this. You began protecting yourself long before there was anything to protect from. This pattern doesn't just affect relationships. It shapes your identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who just doesn't click with people. Someone who values independence, someone who doesn't need much. But underneath that identity is tension, because you do want closeness. You just don't trust it to last. Psychology calls this a defensive expectation pattern. It's when your brain predicts emotional loss in advance, so it can soften the impact. And prediction, not reality, begins guiding your behavior.
You are not cold. You are not incapable of connection. You adapted. At some point, your brain learned that closeness equals vulnerability, and vulnerability sometimes equals pain. So it built a system, not to reject people, but to avoid the crash. Avoidance isn't hatred, it's emotional shock absorption, like tightening your muscles before impact. The problem is, you're bracing even when no one is pushing you, and that constant bracing feels like distance.
To understand this, we need to look at how the brain predicts safety. Your brain is not designed to make you happy. It's designed to reduce threat. And one of the strongest threats it monitors is social rejection. Neuroscience shows that social pain activates similar regions as physical pain, especially the anterior cingulate cortex. So when you've experienced emotional disappointment before, your brain stores it like a bruise, not just the memory, but the expectation. Here's the metaphor. Imagine your brain as a weather app. If it has seen storms before, it starts predicting rain more often, even when the sky looks clear. This is called predictive coding. Your brain constantly guesses what will happen next based on past experiences. If closeness once led to loss, your brain predicts loss again. And here's the mental model: expectation, emotion, behavior, confirmation. You expect disappointment. That expectation creates subtle anxiety. That anxiety changes how you act, and your changed behavior sometimes creates the distance you feared. It becomes self-reinforcing, not because you wanted it to, but because your nervous system values certainty over hope. Hope feels unstable. Prediction feels safer.
Now here's the part most advice skips. You don't fix this by forcing trust. You work with the brain's prediction system. Step 1. Separate past from present. What to do? When you feel yourself withdrawing, ask one quiet question. Is this happening now, or is this familiar? Why it works? This activates the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for context evaluation. It helps override automatic threat predictions coming from the amygdala. Example: someone takes longer to reply. Instead of assuming loss, you pause and notice, I've felt this before, but this moment isn't proof. You create space between memory and reality.
Step 2. Stay 5% longer. What to do? When you want to emotionally step back, stay engaged just 5% longer than usual. Why it works? Avoidance strengthens fear pathways in the brain. Small exposure weakens them through neuroplasticity. Example: you're about to cancel plans because you feel uncertain. Instead of canceling, you show up, even if you stay a little quieter. You're teaching your nervous system that closeness doesn't automatically equal collapse. Not dramatically, just gradually.
Step 3. Track micro-disappointments. What to do? Notice small moments where someone doesn't meet expectations and observe your reaction. Why it works? Your brain often generalizes one disappointment into global threat. By isolating events, you prevent overgeneralization, a common cognitive distortion. Example: a friend forgets something you said. Instead of labeling the relationship unreliable, you treat it as one data point. Storm clouds don't mean climate change. They're just clouds. Step 4. Redefine strength. Shift your internal definition of strength from not needing anyone to staying open despite uncertainty. Why it works? Identity shapes behavior through self-schema theory. When you update your identity, your behavior begins aligning with the new self-concept. Example: instead of saying, "I'm just independent," you begin thinking, "I'm someone learning to stay present." Subtle change, big neurological impact. Because the brain wants consistency with identity. Step 5. Allow controlled hope. What to do? Let yourself imagine positive outcomes briefly. Why it works? Optimistic visualization activates reward circuitry, especially dopamine pathways. When hope is experienced in small, safe doses, it stops feeling like a threat. Example: instead of bracing for someone to leave, you let yourself consider they might stay. Not as fantasy, just as possibility. Possibility reduces rigidity in prediction, and rigidity is what keeps the fear alive.
Here's the simple model to remember. Your brain is not rejecting people. It is predicting pain. Prediction creates protection. Protection creates distance. Distance creates the very outcome you feared. So the work isn't about becoming more social. It's about retraining prediction. Think of it like adjusting the sensitivity of a smoke alarm. You don't remove it, you recalibrate it. You keep the safety, but reduce the false alarms. And each time you stay slightly open, each time you separate memory from moment, you lower the alarm's volume, gradually.
You don't hate people. You don't avoid connection because you're detached. You avoid it because you remember. And remembering is not weakness, it's intelligence. The question is no longer, how do I stop feeling this? It becomes, how do I teach my mind that the storm isn't always coming? Closeness will always carry risk, but distance carries certainty. And sometimes the quietest act of courage is staying just a little longer than your fear expects.